Okay. I will call the meeting to order. Prior to commencing our regular business, I would like to first thank the Township of Chatsworth for hosting this evening. On behalf of myself and council and staff, we appreciate your hospitality. I assume the beer will come later. Mayor Mackey, I'd like to invite you to introduce the members of your council and staff that are here present here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Burley, and welcome to our colleagues from Georgian Bluffs. Nice to have you cross over the southern border. It's my pleasure to introduce Councillor Diana Ray, Councillor Sean Gregg, Councillor Elizabeth Thompson, and Deputy Mayor Brian Gamble.
Thank you, Mayor Mackey. I will now take the opportunity to introduce my council that's present here tonight. I'll start off the far side. Councillor Colburn, Councillor Barfoot, Councillor Pringle, Deputy Mayor Carlton, and CAO Fletcher, would you please introduce the staff that are here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And with us tonight, we have Deputy Clerk Carly. I have the Treasurer, Samantha Buchanan. I have Director of Operations, Stephen Dahlmeyer, and we have the Director of Corporate Services and our Clerk, Brittany Drury, in addition to myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mayor Mackey?
And I'd be remiss not to mention that our CAO, Patty Cinnamon, is here. So I apologize for that, Patty.
I'd like to put him on the spot. Okay, thanks very much.
I can admit when I'm wrong.
Thanks to everybody for being here tonight, and now we'll proceed with our business here tonight. I'm going to start off by reading our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi nations who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to Chippewa Saugeen, the Chippewa Nawash, now known as Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Approval of the agenda. I have a recommendation here that the agenda be approved as presented. Someone to move it, put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by, I wonder would it be appropriate if I just called yourself by your first name instead of your titles? Okay? And make it a lot easier. Start again with Kathy Colburn. Moved it, and second by Les. Okay? Is there any discussion on motion before us? Seeing none, show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. Declaration of peculiar interest, you can clear any time you see fit during the meeting. We're down to staff reports. I'm going to read the recommendation to put it on the floor. That report OPS 2022-09, Biogas Feasibility Study, and the study report titled Source Separated Organics Availability, Digestion Technology and Beautification Use of Bio Study attached to this report as Appendix A be received for information. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Grant, second by Sean. I'll now turn the floor over to our CEO, Fletcher. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Burley. And good evening, members of Chatsworth and Georgian Bluffs Council. My overview will be brief, and then I believe my colleague CAO Cinnamon has a couple of comments, and then we'll turn it over to the joint councils for discussion. We're really here this evening at the request and the direction of the BioGrid Joint Management Board. They met on March 18th of this year to consider the report that's attached to the joint CAO's report. There was a request and a feeling at that meeting that we needed to convene a joint meeting of the two councils to discuss the matter further and even to discuss and consider the partnership between the two townships. And with that, I think that's my overview of why we're here tonight. I'd invite my colleague CAO Cinnamon to add any additional comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Patty, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. First of all, I just want to thank my colleague, CAO Fletcher. We've met a couple of times to talk about the feasibility report, and so thank you to Georgian Bluffs for sharing that with us. I think it's a good starting point and an opportunity to come together and have some further conversation on the feasibility report. I certainly shared it with my council, and we, council did have an opportunity to discuss it, and I think we'll have some fruitful discussion this evening. So again, thank you to Cynthia and to Georgian Bluffs Council as well.
Thank you, Patty. So I'm going to move right into the heart of the situation here tonight. I'm going to open the floor up to questions from any council member around the table. Who wants to start off? It was a good report. Plenty of things in it. I think the recommendation was that we were looking at 1B was preferred option.
Through you, Mayor Burley, to the group, yes, the recommendation in the appended report was really to do a number of different things. There were a number of next steps in that report in terms of investment or an option from the feasibility study. It was sort of that base level option 1B. There are a number of things that we need to do as next steps. We need to look at how we're operating this bio digester and bio assets. We're not optimizing the length of time that we could be operating it. We're not operating it to its maximum volume. So those are next steps. In terms of partnerships, investment opportunities that might be out there, in terms of folks who are interested in providing additional volume of feedstock, maybe from a fee-for-service kind of standpoint. There's other municipalities. There are industries that are interested in what we're doing with our biogrid assets. There's pending legislation that will require municipalities and industries to divert organics from the landfill. So these were all next steps that we saw looking into to maximize this asset and its income earning potential or revenue potential.
Thank you, Cynthia. You know, we've been waiting years and years and years for the province to do something about enforcing organics to go to a facility like the Barchester. And I don't know how many more years we're going to wait or if it's ever even going to happen. But I can remember years ago, Mayor Mackey, that we were even down at a conference and they were saying they're going to go ahead with this, and it ended up not happening. I'm going to open the floor up to anybody, any comments from council members. Mayor Mackey, please go ahead.
Well, I can cut to the chase, I guess, and certainly our council, and we do, as Patty mentioned, we appreciate that Georgian Bluffs Council provided us with the biodigester feasibility study, as well as other reports that have been, gathered, over the years. I think for our township, it's been a frustrating ride. I think the biodigester, you're absolutely right, Dwight, that, our predecessors had very good intentions when they decided to put the biodigester in. It was done under the impression or the belief that the province was going to ban the spreading of septage on approved fields. That never happened, and as a result, we didn't get the material going to the biodigester. The Township of Chatsworth still, as 50% partners, the lagoon is important to us. We see the lagoon and wanting to participate in the lagoon going forward. We don't have a lagoon, and not knowing where the province may go, we would like to have our municipality in a position that we've got a spot to take septage. As far as source separate organics, as a rural municipality, we don't have the large urban centers. Most people have other means of getting rid of their source separate or organics. So currently, we do not, feel that, that is a big issue for us at this point, or do we foresee that, up the road, because people can, disperse of it into their manure piles or over the fence or into their composter. We've made investments, for a small municipality, they've been significant investments, and we just haven't seen the value coming out. We continue to spend roughly $100,000 a year into the operations of the biodigester, and I think typically we'll have 5 or 6 septic tanks that maybe get diverted there. The rest are going to approved fields at this point. We have looked at and had reports done on whether or not it made sense to continue operating the biodigester. We've learned lots of things going along through this. We've learned that material from septic tanks have already off-gassed, and it's not the type of material that a biodigester wants. We've learned that source separate organics is the material that it wants, and as was mentioned by the CAO, as the province is moving in that direction, by 2025, certain size cities are going to have to divert that material away. So I think there is tremendous opportunity at the biodigester, but our council is not prepared to put any more money into it. And, in the reports, we know that, as CEO Fletcher indicated, I think option 1B talks about $700,000 plus or minus for road upgrades, adding a flare, and some other, but after that, it's going to need a separation or storage unit for source separate organics. And a couple of years ago, that was in the $5 million ballpark. It's nice to see that there's value there. We recognize, that the certificate of the environmental certificate of approval has value. It's an important site and can be an important site for the region. The city of Owen Sound is going to need some place to get rid of it. Port Elgin, there's a lot of Meaford. There's a lot of our built-up areas are going to need a place. I think there's private companies out there, and in our opinion, private companies usually operate things better than municipal governments can. So we'd be very interested in divesting ourselves of the biodigester if there's partners out there that are interested in it. And again, we would like to maintain ownership or an opportunity to continue to utilize the lagoon. Not sure what that would look like, but for the last 12 years, the lagoon hasn't really cost us very much. It can provide what is needed for the 2 municipalities as far as septic waste goes. I think it's been pumped out, in my recollection, once since I've been part of the board, and that was shortly after the agreement. It ended up being pumped out, but that wasn't a big ticket item. It's the actual operations of the biodigester that's been costing the money, and we haven't been getting the return. Lots of different reasons. Not the right product primarily was the reason we haven't been getting the return, but there is opportunity, with natural gas. But anyways, I think our position is we're hoping our partners would allow us to remove ourselves from the biodigester and continue, if possible, as a partner in the lagoon, or continue to have access to the lagoon. I hope I didn't speak out of turn.
Thank you,
but,
Mayor Mackey, for your great comments. It's good that we're open and honest, what we all want to do. Georgian Bluffs and Chatsworth will always be good neighbors. We're always going to work together. It's a direction that Georgian Bluffs Council can maybe look at and see what direction we'd like to go to work with you people. If it means that we can work out some kind of an agreement where you, Chatsworth, are no longer a partner per se with the biodigester, and we bring in another partner to take over where you were, so be it. That we can investigate that. Look forward to the opportunity. And as for the lagoon, there's no reason why we, if two municipalities, can't come up with some kind of agreement that will work good for both sides. I'm not saying you'd be part owner of it. Maybe there's an agreement that we can work out that you'd pay a fee to use or whatever. I don't know what that all comes down. Maybe you'll be still half owners of it. I don't know. It's just, those are the kind of talks that we need to do now. Is this going to be resolved before the end of the term of councils? No, it will not. It'll take a bit of time to investigate everything, but at least it puts two councils in the right direction of how we're going to resolve this situation we got in front of us. And that's what we want to do. And we have two CEOs sitting down there. I think all they would need from both councils, if we agree that they'd start the process to start investigating either other partners, changing partners, Chatsworth, a way that Chatsworth can get out, or there's dozens of things I can think of that maybe at least if you were given instructions to do that, you could proceed with it. Comments from anyone else around the table? I realize the two mayors have been doing a lot of talking, so please, Brian, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate what Mayor Mackey has said. We value Georgian Bluffs as a very good partner and neighbor, and we don't want anything to interfere with that, but we just don't see how this is going to have any advantage to us in the future. But we do see where Georgian Bluffs can do well with it. You know, it's going to take maybe 3 or 4 years, but down the road, we're seeing this, you know, source-separated organics, and there's got to be a place for it, like Owen Sound or wherever. And, you know, we've had some companies mention it to us that they might be interested, so I think it's out there. But we just, you know, we just don't have the need for it. That's...
No, and that's, you're right as a council and your municipality, and it's good that you are being upfront and just tell us what you want. We can all work together and come up with the right solution. We don't know for sure how many partners are out there. We know there's quite a few. There's one that's right across the road from the bar. Jester may have a great interest in that facility too. So there's plenty of options that we can really look into to come with. And I can realize we're both rural municipalities, and we have different needs and wants and so on. So yeah, it's been one hell of a ride from the bar Jester since we started to where we are today. Has it cost a lot of money? Yes, it's cost a lot of money. I don't know what my council thinks. I think we're still thinking in terms of it's still a valuable asset for the region. And if we can find some other solution to make it work, we'll all try and do that together. Chatsworth and Georgian Bluffs together. Come up with that solution to how we're going to fix. That's important. We, as Georgian Bluffs, can't do it on our own. We need everybody to work together to make it work. And I'm quite sure we can do that. Councilor Colburn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I have to do something to turn this on, or is it on?
Just speak in real close.
Thank you, and I can appreciate Chatsworth Council's position entirely. I would say, though, Mr. Mayor, that because this facility's been governed by a board, our council really has had very little say in the direction we'd like to see the biogrid go. So while I understand that this is a stepped procedure and staff will need to work together and the councils will need to work together to work something out, beyond that, if we're left with the biogrid facility for just our municipality, we need all hands on deck. We need all of our minds put together, and I don't want us to make any assumptions about where we think we want to go with that facility. I still think there's a lot of discussion amongst ourselves as a council before we ask staff to bring back any kind of a report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Colburn. Other comments around the table? Diane?
Oh, you can, okay. Thank you very much. What we are saying is that we are at a stalemate, and you know, if Georgian Bluffs would like to move ahead and invest to reduce their loss and to get the biogrid going, we are holding you back because we have no interest in investing more money just to reduce loss where we don't see substantial gain for us. So we see ourselves as holding you back from maybe pursuing something that would be very profitable for Georgian Bluffs. So,
Thank you, Diane, for your comments. Grant, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, there's some great comments there, and I kind of was going to piggyback off Councillor Colburn here that, yeah, we've got a lot of, there's a ton of discussions that need to be had moving forward. We have been in this process, but not really in this process because we've been doing feasibility studies and a lot of things have been happening, and we really haven't sat down and put our teeth into it to see where we're really going. I 100% wholly appreciate where Chatsworth's coming from in the whole scenario. And as us in Georgian Bluffs, speaking for myself, I believe we're not 100% sure where we're going to go either, but we can't do it alone. There's no way as a small township we can take this project on and do it ourselves. Can't happen, will not happen as long as I'm 6 months left or whatever I got, but you never know, right, with the election. But again, there's no way we can do it either alone. So with Chatsworth saying that, they're willing to not so much bow out, but change direction and let us move forward, that's a super opportunity for us to see what we can find, and then we can decide which way we want to go. I can't see in the real world that, the lagoon situation is there and it's useful, but I think there's going to be an advantage or a need for the rest of it coming forward. I think the government's going to push it on us eventually, but again, we need a lot more information.
Thank you, Grant. I agree 100% with what you're saying, that Georgian Bluffs, thanks to the grace of Chatsworth, if Georgian Bluffs Council decides that at least we can start the investigation for future partners, direction we want to go, at least the road, we finally got a road where we can start walking down, look at. Yes, our council needs to have an awful lot of discussions what route we want to go, but at least with Chatsworth being up front and telling us what you want, it gives us that opportunity to start that process. The lagoon, that will be a conversation I think that Georgian Bluffs Council will have and get back to Chatsworth and see how and what we can do to help make that work if we go a different direction. It's a big discussion. I personally cannot see us coming to a solution on this thing before this term of council is up. I think we're going to find that we can start the process. A new council comes in. That new council may have a different direction. I don't know, but that's just my personal feeling. I'm seeing heads shaking from our CAO.
Nodding. I think this is great discussion from council, and I think being relatively new to the discussion, I think it's good that we have some direction. What I would say is I think there's a lot of work that I'm going to commit my colleague for now to assist with, but I think between the two CAOs, we could take away what I'm hearing is from Chatsworth's perspective, want to understand how we might change the partnership or dissolve the partnership, but there is still a want for some access to the lagoons. I've heard from Georgian Bluffs Council no commitment at this point for investment moving forward, but what might that look like? Very clear, and I would agree with you. I don't think our township can tackle this all on our own, but one of our next steps was to look at potential investors, potential partners, fee-for-service folks, so that's a big enough body of work as well. So I would invite my colleague to make comment, but I think Mr. Mayor, or both mayors, there is a body of work that we could take on, bring back to the respective councils. If we have to have another joint council meeting, that's fine. I would suggest that it's not within this term of council, that it likely is about a year from now, would be my recommendation. I don't know how you feel.
Patty, go ahead.
Thank you, and I would wholeheartedly agree. As I mentioned, Cynthia and I've had numerous occasions to talk about the biogrid, and I think between the two of us, if it's acceptable to the two councils, that you give us direction to further conversation as staff in terms of what this divesting or dissolving a partnership may look like, and we can bring back some conversation and some reports to each of the councils in terms of, what are the opportunities? And I think certainly there are opportunities out there, but there's some considerations. I think there's many considerations in terms of, some sort of an exit agreement or, access to the lagoon. All of that is going to take time to really consider all of the implications for both municipalities. And I mentioned from the outset, we've developed a very good working relationship, and I think, we can bring some information back that I think will be satisfactory to both municipal councils.
Thank you, Patty. And just without putting words in the CAO's mouth, are you suggesting that you'd like both our councils to maybe give you instructions that you go back and investigate opportunities going on that line and then bring it back to both councils together?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not even going to try and be the expert on how to massage a motion. I'm going to ask Ms.
No,
Drury.
I was gonna go to the clerk because she's very magical when it comes to words, but I was just wondering if that was sort of what you're hoping to get? Oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
Thank you, Dwight. Over the years, there has been a plan, different plans in place for agreements with private enterprise and stuff. I'm not sure that your council was ever aware of all the details. Chatsworth was. You'd like the information. It was out there then. From what I'm hearing now is we might be getting into that again, and it never went anywhere. I would say we're having the discussion now. Let's not wait. Let's keep talking. Absolutely get your information, your feasibilities, all that, what you desire. Absolutely. But I'm not willing to wait a year. Things always simmer off. New council, new voices. I'd like to see us work towards this. We're here now. Let's keep going towards it. In here it alludes to past studies. There's information there in regards to past partnerships that did not come to play. We've been through this once or twice before. We could do it again 2 or 3 more times and never get out of this. So I think now that we're finally sitting together, let's just keep working at this. I understand you wanting information, absolutely. But we're prepared now to really have a heart-to-heart talk and deal with this now. It may not be in this term of council that the resolution comes, but we certainly are willing to work with it now as best we can.
Thank you, John, and I agree. A good statement. Madam Clerk, might I ask you before I go to Deputy Mayor, how would you amend this motion to kind of capture what we're trying to do?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in considering all of the comments that have been made thus far this evening, it would be my recommendation that an amendment be facilitated to the motion that's currently being considered. And the amendment to said motion would add 2 lines that read as follows: that staff are hereby directed to negotiate alternative ownership opportunities, including releasing the Township of Chatsworth from the existing ownership partnership with potential to continue joint use of the lagoons, and further to investigate external partnerships, including private and public opportunities. That's simply my recommendation with considering the conversation that's happened thus far.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. John, go ahead.
Well, thank you. In your motion, could I ask that it added that you say shared usage? We're shared owners now. Yep. I would like to see that also in there, because the option may be that we still are co-owners of the lagoon. And I think it's just misleading saying, shared usage.
Okay. And who was it? You were next. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So I was thinking we had made a huge move forward here until Sean started talking. So I guess if I may, I'd like to ask Sean exactly what you mean when you say you would like to sort of start settling this tonight. Are you looking at getting the beginnings of an arrangement whereby Chatsworth is being bought out, or what are you looking at? I think it's important. At our last board meeting, we finally got to this point where we're going to meet jointly and admit that this isn't working for Chatsworth. It's maybe working for Georgian Bluffs. We still have some more information to get. I think I'd like us to keep going on that sort of track and not veer off somewhere. So if you don't mind giving a little more clarity there, thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. We don't see enough of you folks. We're neighbors. We have this valuable asset here, and we never get to see the other councils. The board sits, you make decisions, you bring back the information to us. We're finally sitting here. I think it was a year ago we sat, and one of the proposals before us then was turned down, and we haven't seen you since. We're finally here. Exactly what you talked about. If it, you know, if it means, and I can't speak for the rest of the council here. I don't want to put words in their mouth by any means. But if that is the option, that we are bought out, let's have that discussion. You know, if we're not willing to put any more money into it, all said. So I don't know where the agreement goes, but here we are finally sitting. I'm just afraid that if we send it back to staff, it gets shuffled on a desk and other things come up, and we finally never get to have this meeting again for quite some time. And that's, I think, what's really holding us back. Like, we have information in front of us, and thank you for that. Let's use it. Let's keep working. I don't want to wait till next April to see you again.
Thank you, Sean. I agree 100% what you're saying, other than the phones in Georgian Bluffs work all the time. You can have a meeting with Georgian Bluffs anytime you wish, since we're neighbors. You're more than welcome to come to any of our council meetings. We'd like to see you there. I don't think either council can make a decision right tonight to say we're going to buy Chatsworth out and so on. We don't know what Georgian Bluffs Council are going to think and want to do. So all we've done is you've been upfront with us, and you're telling us, giving us a direction that we can follow. And there's no reason why we can't try to fast track it as far as we can get before this council term's up. I think there's no reason why we can't do that. No, I'll have both CAOs mad at me, but.
No, and I appreciate the comments, and I'm new to this situation, but I think you cannot downplay the amount of work that might go into even simply looking at our partnership and how there might be an exit agreement. I mean, that's not a small body of work in and of itself. I mean, fair enough if councils want to continue chatting, but what we're talking about, and I think the motion that Ms. Drury put on the paper has a lot of parts to it. And I think we have to be realistic about what we can accomplish and accomplish well. So those are just my comments. And this is on top of a number of other things that are going on, so.
I can appreciate the workload that would happen with this, Cynthia, but I think as Sean was saying, there's no reason why we can't have more joint meetings in the next while in order for you to update us how far you are and what's happening. I think that would be a good thing.
No, that's a fair comment, Mr. Mayor. I just want people to be realistic about the deliverable and the time frame.
Oh, I think everybody around here can appreciate that. Mayor Mack, I've seen your hand up next.
Well, I just wanted to say, thank you, Mayor Burley. I completely agree with Sean's comment around adding the lagoon as far as potential ownership. I think it's important for both councils, you know, to not lose sight that the biodigester and the lagoon can operate as separate entities. And there is a possibility that someone comes in and buys the biodigester, makes a very good offer on the biodigester. Both parties here could still maintain interest or ownership of the lagoon. And the biodigester, whoever purchased it, could be paying us for some of the material that's going into the lagoon. So I think there's benefit for both municipalities, you know, to have the lagoon. We know that. I think both parties know that. We know that we want to have access to it at a minimum, but we certainly would like to see what a joint ownership of the lagoon would look like. The biodigester, I'm not sure where that's going, but I do believe there's two separate business cases at that site, and it shouldn't be all or nothing. I think it can be partitioned off. So, I mean, that I think part of the work that our CAOs need to do and bring that information back. We have no idea what some private companies may want to offer for that biodigester site. It might be a check that both councils would have a hard time saying no to. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that both municipalities have made an investment. It just hasn't been a cost. I'm optimistic that we can all get our money back out of that if we choose to sell it or sell portions of it. So that's my thoughts, and I think the resolution that's there, it will take some time, but as far as our council, we would like to leave this term of council with a work plan that the new council, that we're not 4 years down the road again. We are serious about wanting to divest ourselves of the biodigester itself. And I think that's best for everybody.
Thank you, Scott. Patty?
Thank you, Dwight, and certainly appreciating all the comments. And I think both Cynthia and I can commit to moving this forward. But it is very complex, even though we're partners. It is complex to divest any of the partners from an agreement. Some of you may recall at a previous joint meeting, I did a presentation to the joint councils about the existing agreement and some of the faults with that agreement. We want to make sure that we get this right for both of our councils. That the existing agreement contained, so many errors, and I think we're all well aware of that. We need to make certain that, all of the implications for both councils are taken into consideration. And I will state, in terms of workload right now, my council's certainly aware. I'm wearing several hats right now. I'm still without a treasurer, so I can commit to putting, working with Cynthia, but I mean, there are other factors at play. I'm also the clerk, and I have an election that I'm preparing for. So we can certainly commit to work together and keep our respective councils up to date, but this isn't going to happen in a couple of months, quite honestly.
Thank you, Patty. Do I see a hand up over on the side? Go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. I just wanted to I want to jump off from some comments Sean made and also Scott, because I feel the same way from a council perspective of Georgian Bluffs. I don't want to see us kick this can down the road another 4 years as well. This is not a facility that has been useful for us at all. So with all due respect to our clerk, maybe I'm not understanding the wording of the motion, but when we talk about leaving here with the understanding that we're going to be looking for partnerships and investors and the like, I really think that our council needs to have that conversation first, because maybe what we say, and we're missing 2 councillors here tonight, maybe what we're saying is we want to divest ourselves of it too. We're not looking for someone to partner and buy into it to work with us. I think it could be an important facility in the future, but is it imminent that legislation is going to come? We were told that in 2017. That was under the Kathleen Wynne government, and there's been nothing since then. So if there's something imminent that legislation is coming forward from the province, I guess I missed that news report because I haven't seen it. So I don't want Georgian Bluffs to commit to something for the next 4 years that is costing our ratepayers even more money with the loss of our partners without having that fulsome discussion with our entire council first. So maybe you can clarify for me, Brittany, was I misunderstanding the intent of that part of the motion?
I don't want to speak on behalf of our CAOs, but I believe the intention of this motion is simply to give our CAOs the opportunity to investigate all of those options, being releasing Chatsworth, joint ownership of the lagoons, and the implications of both of those options on the Township of Georgian Bluffs Council. Yes. So, CEO Fletcher, would you have any further comment?
Yes, and what I'd say is often a motion's worded as such to keep it open and broad enough that we can look at all options. We're not necessarily saying we're going down the path of partnership, but that's an option that could be presented back to the councils. We're not necessarily saying we're looking for an investor, but if an investor came forward, we have that option then to include it in the report. I think we're just trying to keep the motion as broad as possible to then, I think Chatsworth is clear on where they want to go. Georgian Bluffs may not be, but I think there's also opportunity for Georgian Bluffs to have some conversation along the way. But we want to keep the motion as broad as possible.
Thank you, Cynthia. And Councilor Colburn, I do agree with what your comments, what you're saying. Chatsworth has come in here as a joint council with a clear-cut direction they would like to go. We as Georgian Bluffs Council really haven't had those discussions at our council chamber with our council. So I think we need to have that. But for the sake of the meeting tonight, the motion is just to clearly define basically what Chatsworth wants and gives a direction how we can have staff proceed with it. Am I correct in saying that?
You are correct, sir.
Grant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so I'm kind of cutting it back to maybe grassroots here a wee bit, but from what I'm hearing from Chatsworth here today and our own council here today is Chatsworth's ask is they want to be part of the lagoon scenario and not so much the source organic side of things. So, and we don't know what direction we really want to go in the whole process. But I'm in agreement with Sean on or Councillor Gregg on the piece of the lagoon that we should come up to some sort of an agreement that works for both townships and move on. Because that's the part they want to be involved in, not the source organics. We have no idea where we're going to go with the source organics or who's going to help us. So to me, I'm almost thinking that we should be not changing the motion, but go back to grassroots where we can maybe come up with some scenario that's going to work for both on the lagoon piece and take the source organics, whatever directions it's going to go with whatever we decide we want to look at or who we can get for a partner. But I think at the end of the day, what Chatsworth is asking, I think we can put that to bed. Like we can actually, I know it's not going to happen overnight, but what they're asking is small in the big picture. And that's in my mind.
No, I agree with what you're saying. It makes perfect sense. But keep in mind, the lagoon and the biodigesters are on the same chunk of land. So it's just not a simple matter of getting agreement on the biodigester without involving the other part too. Am I correct in saying that, CAOs?
Yes, you are correct, and I think it's a good point. If there are aspects of the body of work that we can accelerate, that's fair. But we're also partners in the biodigester, and I heard the comment buying us out or divesting, and we need to really explore what that means and what that looks like. So,
Mayor Mackey, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. I would encourage Georgian Bluffs to have some discussions in your chambers about where you want to go, because I think some of the direction from your council would help our two CAOs as they move forth. Talking with other companies, it would be a lot easier for them if they knew clearly where Georgian Bluffs stood as far as the different portions or partitions of that property. So I would hope that you guys will have that we've had the discussions. I would hope that you guys, are able to plan out the future of the biodigester itself also.
And I agree with that. We as Georgian Bluffs, the board heard from Chatsworth saying you want it out. So the board and two councils got together to have a discussion on that very topic. At this meeting, you clearly are indicating you want out of the biodigester, but in on the lagoon. All right, so now we have a clearer direction. So when we go back to our council, Georgian Bluffs Council as a whole can discuss what do we want to look at and what direction do we want to go. And Madam Clerk, could you please read that motion again from the start?
Yes. So I have taken Councillor Gregg's recommendation, so please feel free to amend as this joint council sees fit. So that staff are hereby directed to negotiate alternative ownership opportunities, including releasing the Township of Chatsworth from the existing ownership partnership specific to the biodigester, with an option to maintain ownership and use of the lagoons, and further to investigate external partnerships, including private and public opportunities.
So that,
Is that satisfactory?
what the motion is saying is it just gives, it's still wide open. It gives you the opportunity, the CAOs, an opportunity to invest things that come up and as you're going through the process. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us? Carol, go ahead, please.
Thank you. First of all, I have a question. Who are all the extra chairs for?
It's a public meeting.
Pardon?
It's a public meeting.
It's a public meeting.
Yes, it is. It's recorded too.
That's funny. I bumped into some people in the grocery store from Derby and they didn't know anything about it. This should be a public meeting.
It is.
Okay, it is.
It is.
Was it advertised on site as public?
Yes, it was.
Well, the guy that approached me in the grocery store didn't know a thing about it. And he should have, because he's an ex-politician who is now retired. You know who I'm talking about.
Thank you, Carol. I know a lot of retired politicians.
I can't hear you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowerfoot. I know a lot of retired politicians, but I think I know who you're alluding to, and that individual is aware of some things.
There's a couple things that bother me, and that is, this has not been a transparent action as far as I'm concerned. Because I read here where the board has the authority to commit the council to a 5-year contract. In fact, they instructed staff. This is in the background report. It said meeting, and I've been asking about this meeting ever since our CAO has been with us. And finally, we're having it. I don't know why all the secrecy. At said meeting, the board directed staff to negotiate a contract for the operation of the biogrid assets for a period of up to 5 years, with the option to renew at the discretion of the board. I thought council would have some say in that. Why is it just 2 people from each municipality has the power to tie us into possibly 10-year contract? Can somebody answer me that?
Councilor Barfoot, the board has no power to commit 2 councils to that contract.
Speak up, Mr. Mayor.
I said the board has no power to commit 2 councils to that agreement. What it does is, does a recommendation in the biodigester minutes, which goes back to both our councils for approval. If both councils approve those minutes, then staff will move forward with the contract. Am I correct in saying that?
You read all this?
Yes?
That's where it says it.
Yeah? Yeah? John, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Burley. Councillor Barfoot makes very valid points, and that will go to what CAO Cinnamon referred to as the initial agreement. Really had a lot of errors and omissions and stuff, and what you're referring to should have been added in there. You know, an opportunity for a lot more discussion with councils, not just with the board, because when you send your 2 members, whoever they are, they really are speaking on behalf of both councils, and we found out that sometimes that isn't where councils maybe want to go.
Patty?
Thank you, Dwight. So just for clarification, so the recommendation from those minutes certainly gave staff the direction to negotiate the whatever term and at whatever price. It still would have to go back to the board, but it would still have to be ratified by each of the councils. So it would come back to the board with a recommendation on what that renewed contract would be, and then the board would make a recommendation which would have to be ratified by council. The board has no authority to enter into the agreement itself.
Okay, let's just step back a moment. And Madam CAO, you can recall me bugging you for ever since you've been here to get information about these meetings, and they weren't forthcoming. They weren't forthcoming at all. I feel as though council has been blindsided here. We don't know all the details. We have to depend on the transparency of our board members. And when I read this, where they have the power to do that, I remember when the biodigester opened, we had a meeting in Chatsworth. You probably remember it, Scott. We had the health unit there, we had provincial people there. Brian would remember it. The council chambers were packed. Do you remember? It was standing room only. That's why I find this hard to believe that this meeting today was advertised. Ratepayers out there are getting sick of money pits. So I don't know what you're going to do, but I would advise that you have a public meeting and have people of authority there, not just politicians. Have somebody there from the Liberal Party if they've got enough nerve to show up, or whoever. Have your health unit there, because the health unit explained it extremely well, and people left there and they were nervous when they heard what was the, what do you call it, bio whatever, that was going on the fields that's growing our food. I don't, were you at that meeting, Patty? It was, oh. That's what the public need to hear. Remember, folks, we're here for one reason. We were voted in to represent our ratepayers. I feel I have been negligent when it comes to representing the ratepayers fairly when it comes to issues such as this biodigester, because I can't even share information with them because I'm not getting the information I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for, is more transparency. I want to know about things when they happen, not 2 and 3 months later.
Thank you, Carol. Deputy Mayor Carlton, go ahead.
I have a couple of responses there, Councillor Barfoot. Number one, when the biodigester board looked at the possibility of that contract, we said up to 5 years, so that it could be a shorter term in the event there was going to be a potential partner coming in, so that we would be open to be able to do different things for that biodigester. We also didn't want to get put into the position again of, I'm going to use the Wyerton agreement with water, where we hit the end of an agreement and didn't have an option to renew. So hence why we put that in. We were trying to protect everything as well as we could. Those meetings are also open to anyone to be there. So anyone can attend and take part in, listen to the information. The minutes go out to both councils, and we're available there to ask questions. So I take offense at the idea that things aren't transparent. They're as transparent as we can possibly make them.
I was referring transparent to the members of council.
Councillor Barfoot, just so you know, Georgian Bluffs employee used to be running the bar adjuster with, I believe, Aqua. We did a change in personnel at Georgian Bluffs, so we need to get somebody to run the facility that could do it. And that's why we went to this contract in the first place. And it was a monthly contract, so we as a board decided that that's very expensive.
So there has been a 5-year contract signed with an option of another 5.
No.
What contract are you
we
talking
go
about?
month to month. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple of comments, and by no means to overstep. When the Biodigester Joint Board of Management was established, Councillor Gregg has mentioned it was established as a municipal service board, essentially. So it is delegated the authority to maintain operations of this asset that it was created to govern. Now, I think the tone that I've heard this evening is there's a lot of reviewing that needs to happen, both of the establishing documents and of the ownership partnership altogether. So I think in evaluating the partnership as well as evaluating the future of this facility, we can also evaluate the efficiency of that board and if it needs to be redeveloped in a different way to, as Councillor Barfoot has pointed out, potentially increase the transparency not only to both councils but to the public.
Carol, go ahead.
Okay. For years and years and years, ever since day one of this biodigester 11 years ago, I've heard, oh, we have interested parties. We have interested parties. Where? I haven't seen anybody step forward with an offer in their hands, with a contract in their hands. Maybe Chatsworth has.
John, go ahead.
Thank you. As Chatsworth, I feel we've always been informed. Transparency. We've known about the meetings. We know what's been going on. The in-camera stuff, obviously, that's in camera. But we've always, myself, as Chatsworth, we're aware of stuff. We've been informed and educated on it. So I'm not sure where the breakdown is. So transparency on our side is, I'm not questioning it.
Mayor Mackey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there may be concerns that are not shared at both municipalities. So maybe some of the discussion that is going on right now doesn't need to occur here. Maybe should occur at separate council tables. I would hope that my council members, if they had issues with my role or the deputy mayor's role, will come to us and air them at an appropriate time. We do have a motion on the floor, and as a point of order, I think we should discuss that motion.
Thank you, Mayor Mackey, and I do agree with you 100%. I think if there's no more discussion on this motion before us, I'm going to ask for a show of hands.
Please hold. So the motion that I have read is simply an amendment to the main motion. So we will need a mover and a seconder for the amendment. If you would like me to read it again, I'm more than happy to.
Okay, it's moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, seconded by John Craig, Councillor Craig. A show of hands, all in favor of the amendment, please. Opposed? The motion is carried. Now we'll go back to the original motion, and I do have a mover and seconder. Councillor Barfoot?
No, I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so if you decide to go ahead and dispose of, or Chatsworth decides to go ahead and dispose of their shares, who is doing the, I noticed one thing, being in real estate as long as I was, I noticed one thing, that we've always seemed to be using companies that have conflict of interest. Why would we get Aqua to give us an opinion of value or an opinion of anything? They have a conflict of interest. Sure, they're getting paid. So can somebody answer me that?
Patty, go ahead.
I can certainly try. So in terms of the feasibility study that was commissioned by Georgian Bluffs, that was commissioned before we had to enter into a servicing agreement, which originally was just for a few months. So there was no conflict of interest from Aqua at the time of the preparation of the feasibility study. I think that's been several months since that was first completed and presented to Georgian Bluffs, but they were not operating the facility at that time.
Okay, is there any other discussion on the motion that's on the table before us? See none, I'm going to ask for a show of hands. All in favor of the motion on the floor? Opposed? The motion is carried. I guess we know other business here tonight. Mayor Mackey, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Burley. And not to put Steve, I'm just wondering, Steve, you provided a report at the last joint board meeting. I'm just wondering, for the virtue of the two councils, is there was a recommendation there, but as far as the facility, the operations of the facility, is there anything else that needs to be shared with the two councils? We're not in favor right now of supporting your recommendation of 1B. So I'm just wondering, does that cause any issues with the operations?
No, it does not. Steve does not have a mic, so I'll speak in his behalf. It doesn't interfere with it. It's just the facility is still there. It still needs to be run. That's the first thing we have to understand. We come up with Aqua to run it, to keep things going, and it was a monthly contract. The monthly contract was very expensive. So the board decided that it may be better if we were to try to offer them a 5-year contract with all kinds of escape clauses to reduce that cost. That's why we went that route, and that's why we went ahead. It's the only reason why we did not. So there's no other business here tonight. I'm going to read this confirming. Sean, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Burley. Now that we've got Steve on the hot spot here, I've got a question directed to him, and I'd like him to answer it, actually, if he could. He can use my microphone if needed, or an open one. What is the biodigester doing right now? Is it just merely sitting there with a heater in it, or is there feedstock going into it? Is it doing as it's supposed to? Just for our councils or anybody at home, they can hear exactly what that is doing right now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to both councils, the biodigester is still running. We still have feed coming into it. We do have materials being put into the biodigester. We are continuing it with the status quo of operations. So it is still functioning the same way it was running before.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve, for that. I'm going to read this confirming bylaw. The bylaw 2022-23 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on April 7th, 2022 be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed to seal the corporation, and endorsed in the bylaw book. I need someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Mr. Mackey. Deputy Mayor Mackey. Or Gamble, sorry. He sits beside me all the time. Sorry, Brian. If there's no discussion of the motion before us, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion on the floor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you to your attendance and participation this evening, and special thanks to municipal and production staff for ensuring the meeting was accessible to the public. If there's no other questions, I will now call for adjournment of this meeting. Are we sure that it did go to the public? Okay. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Diane. Oh, Patty, go ahead.
Just a comment, Chair Dwight. On behalf of Chatsworth Council, I would just like to invite everyone for refreshments and some light snacks at the end of our meeting.
Oh, thank you.
The Georgian Bluffs is always so kind to have coffee in their chambers. We thought it was the least we could do to have something here when you're in Chatsworth. So.
Oh, I was thinking something stronger, but okay, that's fine. Okay, a motion to adjourn. I believe Diane and Kathy. Show of hands, all in favor of adjournment. We're now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.